Hello, how are you doing, author Alex Tucker?
I'm doing well, thank you. Just enjoying a little bit of coffee and hanging out with the cats. Yeah, easy morning.
Yes, it is morning time in Japan for you. So
Yeah.
please tell us a little bit about you. What do you like to do outside of writing, Alex?
So, even when it has nothing to do with something I'm working on, I love reading. Big, massive fan of books. Do love to read within my genre, which is horror, but I also love to read a lot of great literary books. Ruth Ozeki, Isabel Allende, Toni Morrison, Jane Austen. Could go on and on. Just love reading, love books. But when I, finally step outside of that world, books, reading or writing, I love getting outside. I love, going for a run,
Mhm.
going on a hike. I love traveling. I gotten a cool opportunity a few years ago that gave me an opportunity to travel a lot internationally, and kind of got addicted to it. So
Yeah.
um, love to do that. I don't feel as up to traveling around the world as much as I used to, so it gets harder and harder. So I love to just kind of explore more of the U.S. as kind of
Yeah,
what I'm
I saw
looking
that you're
forward to.
making your way back to the US soon, so that's good.
Yes, next year. Really looking forward to it. It's been a cool experience, but I'm ready to be home.
So please tell us about your most recent book, Afraid to Feel. We want to hear about it.
Yes. So Afraid to Feel is kind of a slow burn. I would call it light horror in a way. It's not, it's more psychological, emotional,
Not too
but really
gory.
it's about, yes, exactly. Which is kind of what I prefer to read. So I like to
Yeah.
write that. But it's about this man named Corey Gardner. He kind of feels, constantly emotionally paralyzed, more or less. That he's just with his boss is a jerk. He just kind of rides it out. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't get mad. He just lets it happen. And with his wife and kids, he is kind of numb around them as well, just constantly playing the neutral field. And so it becomes a burden at a certain point where his wife is like, I can't carry all this emotional weight anymore. And so as he starts to explore what he has to do is it kind of requires him to dig up some childhood trauma. And it begins with him, in a session with his psychiatrist describing that he questions his reality. And, is any of this real? And so that kind of opens up a whole new part two of the book, which really gets into his backstory and where it kind of starts to get a little bit scarier, creepier. And from there, it just gets a little crazy. The ending is the part that people seem to enjoy the most, and but gives a nice twist to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. It sounds very intriguing. So tell us, where are your favorite places to write? Are you a traditional sit at the desk type of writer, or do you like to write outside or on your sofa?
So if the weather's good and it's quiet, perfect conditions, I like to write outside, just out on the back deck.
Mhm.
But otherwise, I really prefer my office more than any, going out somewhere.
Yeah.
Especially, one of the cats pop in, from time to time. That's kind of nice. Um, but yeah, I really like that. I kind of just like the yeah, being inside of my office. But sometimes I'll mix it up. I do find that going to a coffee shop or something really kind of can make, just a change of scenery can really open things up a little more.
Yeah.
But also, I'm just a believer in writing wherever you are, wherever you go. I've written a lot of short stories and parts of this book or other books just on the go, in airports, airplanes, trains, hotel lobbies,
Yeah.
wherever. So yeah, I believe that there's places that you can write best, but I believe that no place should ever keep you from writing at all. You can always crank something out, even 500 words here and there.
Yeah, that's a good goal. For you, what's your most productive time of day to write?
So usually it's about mid morning for me. When I first wake up in the morning, I'm an early riser, but I don't know that I'm immediately ready to write. It's still got to wake up my mind a little bit. So I usually start out reading, crack open a book, probably spend the first couple hours just reading, drinking some coffee. And
Yeah.
then that kind of gets blood flowing, and then I'll write probably from mid morning to, mid late afternoon usually.
Okay. Um, when you're writing, are you listening to anything in the background? Are you listening to any podcasts or instrumental music or anything?
No, occasionally I'll have some music, maybe some light instrumental, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sometimes I'll try to look for something that feels similar vibes to what I'm writing, maybe.
Okay.
Kind of a weird one is my current whip, this novel I'm working on. I put on an old Metallica album
Oh,
the other
yeah.
day. There's just a scene where I actually reference a Metallica song, and so I was like, I'm gonna put this on while I'm writing this scene
Yeah.
at least. So I do that sometimes, but most of the time I really like the quiet. Honestly, even when I'm driving, I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of a person that lives in my own head,
Yeah.
which a lot of people do. My wife is like, she's like, I want to get out of my head. She's like, that's why I listen to music, podcasts. Even when I go for a run, I'm doing it with nothing. And she's like, how? She doesn't understand it. But I think for me, it helps me process, think about things. So
Um,
usually quiet.
a good one, a good recommendation that I listen to when writing like mysteries or thrillers is if you type in YouTube, the Sherlock Holmes, like type in horror music or something, and it'll play instrumental music like that. That's kind of like creepy, but it's not too
Mhm.
distracting. That's one of my favorite ones.
That's a
Um,
great recommendation. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah. So when you were writing your latest book, did you experience any writer's block at all?
I wouldn't say, traditional writer's block. I did have sort of a unique experience with this book. I think that is kind of, I would say I put up my own walls for myself in a way. So
Mhm.
it was loose idea that it kind of ran around in my brain for a while. I saw an open call for short stories that kind of fit, and I was like, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to write it. And when I flew through it, and over 2 or 3 days, I had like 8,000 words, which the max was 8,000 words, and I was like, and it still wasn't quite even wrapped up. I
Still
felt
had
like.
things to go. Yeah.
Yes. And so I just like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to submit it, go for it. I got rejected pretty quickly, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later. I wasn't surprised. And I was also a little relieved because I was like, okay, now here's my chance to do something more with it. I actually
And
set it
pursue
aside
it.
for a couple of months. Yeah. And when I came back to it, I was like, this could be an actual novella. And so, um, yeah, so I just kind of added a beginning and then a third part. So it's 3-part book, and that short
Okay.
story is pretty much the second part of it. And so I thought it was a unique experience, and I would say, to me, I think it's one I like to share with people, because I think it's a couple of lessons that I learned is, first, you can't make something, a short story or a novella or novel or whatever. You can't make it something it's not. Let it, write it, see what happens. And I think at the same time, anything you write is never a waste. You
Yeah.
can always find a better home for it, or you can rework it, polish it up. And worst case, it never finds a home. You're the only person that ever really, reads it, but it's good practice. Writing something is better than nothing.
I recently had some writer's block and solved it with writing short stories, and they were just flowing right out, and it seemed so easy that it got me back into writing my work in progress that I was ignoring. So yeah, that's great advice, is just to keep on writing whatever, even if it doesn't turn into anything. And a few of my ideas that I counted as work in progresses made them into short stories. It seemed fitting. They were only like 4 chapters. That's where I stopped. So I seemed like to have a twisty ending, but yeah, it worked out well. So I think that
Yeah.
that's a good idea for people other writers who are struggling with writer's block, is to maybe just kind of keep on writing and write something different.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great. I actually was just interacting with another author on Threads, had the similar story that you're describing. He was like,
yeah,
I need to step away from this novel I've drafted and
yeah,
start working on other stuff. And it sounds counterintuitive, I think, to people who don't write, but like you said, you need to keep something flowing. If you're hitting a
yeah,
roadblock,
keep your mind
step
active.
aside.
So in your book, is there a particular scene or a part that is your favorite, that you're very proud of, or that you just like altogether?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier. The part that is the best received, has been the most well received from readers, has been the ending.
Yes,
It's
right.
something I am kind of proud of, and I think it's not just the surprise part of it, but I think it wraps up really nicely.
Hmm.
I don't like to write horror for the sake of scaring people. It should be a point to it. It should be, that horror is a vehicle for some sort of message. And so, with that said, I think the first part of the book is very focused on character building of this guy Corey. And
Yeah.
so, for some readers, some horror readers, it requires a bit of patience. It's like you're all in his head for the most part, and but then in the second part, it gets into some scary stuff. Um, and but then by the third part, it really still a little bit more scary, elements and nice twist, but it really kind of wraps it up to this was really the point. This is the message of the book, which, keep it short. Really, the idea is, being emotionally numb is just unhealthy. At a certain point, those emotions are going to only get more power if you ignore them. So that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. So, sharing that emotional bond with, let's say, another famous author, who would you share your book with?
Ooh, the person that kind of was a major influence for me to start writing was Stephen Graham Jones.
Hmm.
He's very prolific writer. The first one I read was the Only Good Indians, which is one of his big, really famous ones. It was one that really kind of got him a lot of attention. He'd been writing obviously for a long time,
Yeah.
but that book kind of really expanded to me what horror could look like, and I'd always been a fan of it, but I never thought I could write it. And so that kind of just opened my mind. I don't, I'm aspiring to write something anywhere close to as brilliant as that book. It's also very dark and scary.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
but
the dark, creepy things too.
yeah, me too. And and Stephen Graham Jones is also just kind of a master and student slash teacher of that genre. He teaches at University of Boulder, I believe, in Colorado,
Oh,
and
wow.
and you can kind of see that in all his books. Every single book is different. It's almost like he's experimenting, trying to make it sound different than his previous book and how he writes it, his style and his format. And
Nice.
then in his afterwards, he just will spell it all out. What was the process like? What influenced him? His research. I learn a lot every single time I read one of his books. It's so yeah, definitely one of my favorites.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and
Thank
letting
you.
our readers at Seven Story Publishing get to know you and hear about your book. We're interested um, to read that and check it out.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.